Are humans OP? You wanna watch that one? I never seen that. We can watch it. If you think about it,
This episode was sponsored by Skillshare.
humans are really just peak.
Human beings. Are they as overpowered as the game's community would lead you to believe? Short answer, yeah. They're the most meta-defining build of all time, and the undisputed top build in the current expansion. But believe it or not, this wasn't always the case. Humans used to get bodied left and right on a daily basis by other players. And it took a pretty long time before the player base learned how to actually make use of the human build's unique abilities. The story of the humans' rise to dominance is a really interesting one. And so today, we're going to do an in-depth look at the humans' abilities, their strengths, and their weaknesses. Because yes, they do have weaknesses. We'll also go over notable matchups, and finally look at the steps human players took in order to reach their dominant status. First, their unique abilities. I touched on this topic in my video about primates, but I'll recap here and also go into more detail. First off the bat,
Bro,
we
you
have
think
their
you could
ability
beat
to
a
throw
primate?
things.
Like, think about it. How do you spell it? Okay, the Pokemon. No, not the Pokemon. Primate. No. How do you spell it? Is it primate? Like, bro. Like, you think. No, not gonna lie. If you think you could. Do you think you could beat a baby monkey in a fight? Like, not gonna lie. This thing would beat us, bro. Like, it's so fast. Like, it's fast. It'll just like crawl all around you and then just like scratch your. No, bro. Like, that thing would get you, bro. No cap. Like, bro, it's just no. Okay, if you grab it, then you could probably beat it. But like, if you can't, then it's just like crawling all around you. Just, bro. That joint is. Mm-mm.
Other builds can throw
Tripping.
things, but humans can do so harder, faster, and further than anyone else. The reason for this is their body structure. Bipedal builds are tough to balance, both in the game development sense and the center of mass sense. Throwing an item with any real force behind it requires serious balance, achieved only by having shorter arms and longer legs. This is why humans can launch projectiles at deadly speeds, whereas other primates kinda just lob things without putting much effort into it. If they tried to, they would knock themselves over. Even if chimpanzees could figure out how to craft a spear, there's no way they could throw it hard enough to deal any significant damage. Next, their stamina regeneration. Humans can chase down anything. You try to run from a human, you might outspeed them initially, but you'll run out of stamina much sooner than they will, and they'll catch up to you while you're in your weakened state. This is partially because of their
But
superior
think about
balance
it,
again,
Usain
but
Bolt
mostly
was like
it's because of
20
the
miles
human
an hour,
build's
man.
unique choice to not spec into fur. This gives them access to the extremely broken ability Sweat. Every other current build that's decent at distance running recharges stamina by using the move Pant. This works great, but it does require the user to stop running. Sweat, on the other hand, works better while moving, massively extending the distance a human player can run. They've got a few other important abilities that are essential to their kit, but aren't unique to humans. Their ability to speak is unique among mammals, but some birds can pull it off too. In humans, the ability to speak allows them to use one of their signature moves, Teach, which drastically boosts skill point gain,
Imagine we
mitigating
all
the main
could
penalty a
speak,
player
bro.
receives upon getting a game over.
Like,
Humans and birds also share another unique trait, which is being able to stand upright. Standing upright is extremely useful for dealing with stealth builds that might normally be using tall grass to hide. Tool use also might be thought of as a human-exclusive move, and it certainly is the most effective in humans, but it turns out a pretty wide array of other builds can also do it. Birds, primates, cephalopods, and even fish can use tools on occasion. But sweating and throwing, uniquely human. Now onto their weaknesses. And yes, it's true that currently most human players can subvert these with their crafting skill. But it's important to recognize that without equipment, the human build isn't necessarily.
what is that? Yo, what is that? How do you know what this is? Yo. They couldn't climb though, bro. They weren't OP. They're extinct, bro. But them things are huge. They're like just big orangutans. Bro. Orangutans are like low key underrated. Like them things will pick you up and like beat you across their chest, bro. They were like 13 feet? Wait. Oh, really? How do you know this information, bro? Yeah, no, I'm cool. Bro, you seen that they like brought back the these, bro? I look you want one, bro. Like, look how cute they are, bro. Like a little one running around your house. Loki and all white dog. Yo, now that I think about it, bro, I want an all white dog, bro. Either all white or all black. Like a imagine having a panther as a pet, bro. That'd be so fire. Like, bro. That's the wolf. I know. I know they're wolf, but like, bro. You know, yeah, let me raise them. Let me be the pack leader or whatever, bro. Like that would be so cool. Nah, they'll be tame. Like if you could have one animal like in the world and it'll be completely tame, what animal would you have? Me, I'd want like yo, these things are so tough. Them things
Necessarily unstoppable. The decision to not
so
have fur
fire.
granted humans a massive buff to mobility at the cost of stealth. In the mammal faction, fur is a prerequisite to all the major stealth abilities like camouflage, and lack of stealth abilities means getting in close on their targets is a serious challenge. The human build's lack of fur also means they have very low defense, both from physical attacks and from environmental effects. Bear skin offers almost zero armor, to the point where even players from lower weight classes have no trouble dealing damage to humans. And bear skin also takes quite a bit of damage from the sun too. Humans are also pretty limited when it comes to the power stat. Physically, they're the weakest of the great apes, and don't really have any good options for dealing damage. They lack the classic high damage bite attack that nearly every other non-herbivorous build relies on, instead having to resort to blunt attacks like punch and kick, which we all know
He
aren't
tried
very effective
boxing a
damage.
bear?
They lack the classic high damage bite attack that nearly every other non-herbivorous build relies on, instead having to resort to blunt attacks like punch and kick,
Yo,
which we all
that's gotta be fake.
know aren't very effective against builds that have thick fur or skin. The last major weakness I can see is that they're pretty bad at dealing with stealth. The lack of night vision means darkness can really hamper their ability to locate targets, and their lack of a strong sense of smell means camouflage is especially useful against them. Okay, now let's talk about matchups. Obviously, a key feature of the human build is being able to craft equipment. Given basic
That, bro, you be picking the most like a giant snake. You would pick a giant snake. For what? That thing would you'd wake up in its stomach. Yo.
equipment like low-level armor and hunting gear, the human's best matchup is going to be medium-large mammals. Unlike blunt damage, piercing damage is quite effective versus builds with thick hide, but on defense they're actually pretty awful. A human's only option on defense against a large mammal
That's true. I did say it feels completely tame. But like where are you how do you know these things even exist? Like do you be bored
Mammal
one
isn't-
day and just look up rare animals or something? Like you just found like the biggest snake of all time or something. Like where did you see this at, bro?
intimidation, unless they've got some crazy high-level equipment, but I'll make a video on power creep later. The classic human equipment cannot stop a charging tank main unless the intimidate attempt works. But overall, this matchup is one of the reasons humans became top tier. Hardly any builds have favorable matchups against tanks. But that's not to say humans don't have their counters though. As I said before, stealth can be really effective against them due to their lack of a keen sense of smell and night vision. Humans have the ability to win pretty much any fight as long as they've got time to prepare, but taken by surprise, humans have a lot fewer options. Another thing humans have trouble dealing with is flight. Even when a human has a ranged weapon, players with high aerial mobility are pretty safe during flight. Now, as far as I know, there aren't any bird builds powerful enough to one-shot humans, which is important because blunt attacks like punches are actually quite effective against birds. Birds have hollow bones that are resistant to tension and torsion, but not compression. This is the opposite of mammal bones, which are resistant to compression and tension, but not torsion. The point is, birds aren't the best choice against humans, but flight has been unlocked by 4 different classes in the game. Birds, which we just discussed aren't a good choice. Bats, which do even less damage than birds. Reptiles, which unfortunately had their aerial builds banned in patch 1.3.1. And insects.
1.1.
Flying eusocial insects have by far the best matchup versus humans in the entire game. Humans have 0 counterplay against a swarm of stinging insects. I mean, sure, there are special items that they can use to combat swarms if they're prepared, but the amount of human mains who've chosen that as one of their prestige abilities is pretty small. Humans' lack of fur means they have no innate defense against stings. Stings also have the chance to proc the Amphylaxis debuff, which can actually lead to a game over. And it's for this reason that the high score for human eliminations belongs to the Africanized honeybee, known better by its community-given name, the killer bee. And even if the stings don't proc the allergic reaction effect, they will still definitely achieve their primary goal of dropping their resolve to 0 and granting you control over the territory. And we can see that lately the viability of killer bees has only been growing now that they've expanded their territory outside of Africa. Which brings me to my main point. Are humans overpowered? Well, just like the Africanized honeybee, humans really only became OP once they escaped the African server and invaded other areas. Notice how humans took down megafauna across every terrestrial server except Africa. The African tank mains have the matchup experience and counterplay options to deal with the vast array of skills humans have access to. But the rest of the community was totally unprepared to deal with the rapid invasion of new human mains invading their competitive scene. In other words, the devs could have prevented the massive destabilization of the current meta if they'd region-locked humans. Staying competitive in the meta requires a good player constantly be leveling up their skills. There's no better example of this than the rapid rise to dominance that humans experienced. If you'd like to level up your own skills and unlock new ones, I highly recommend Skillshare.
Bro, humans will always be on top. You got authority over everything, bro. As a human main, we what? Okay. Bro.
Right, so in my video on dinosaur builds, I casually referenced the fact that cheetahs are low tier, which ended with me getting a ton of comments from angry cheetah mains asking me to explain myself. And fair enough, I probably should. But instead of just making a video on cheetahs, I figured I'd kill 2 birds with 1 stone by also finally releasing the tier list for the cat dynasty. First, let's talk about the place cats as a whole are at in the meta. So I don't think it comes as a surprise to anyone that cats are exceptionally effective builds that have held a high tier spot in the meta for more than a while. And though this isn't true of every cat build, of which there are more than 40, cats carved out their spot in the meta by being the best choice by far for anyone looking to play an assassin or rogue class. Their weapons and movement kit are carefully crafted to allow cat players to have an easier time scoring critical hits on their targets than most other carnivore players.
There's no way you've seen this on a YouTube video also, bro. This is dinosaur? Why is it so long? Yo. Stinks long. Even its images aren't even regulation. Or like 1080. Whatever it is. What is that? Yo. You know, I know like the most random facts. Okay. It's a alright, yeah, alright.
Like I said, there are more than 40 different builds possible, so I can't really fit them all into a single video. So instead, I'm going to go over the most popular ones, and hopefully the way I analyze them will help you make your own call if you're interested in one of the less popular builds. So anyways, I'm going to start from the bottom of the tier list and go up from there. Right at the bottom, we've got the cheetahs. They have the highest movement speed of any land build, which is definitely an impressive title to hold. When it comes to scoring kills on builds with high mobility like gazelles, antelope, and ostriches, there are a few better at it than the cheetah. But while this works against those particular targets in that particular situation, it serves no purpose when it comes to actually defending the kill. And as a result, a high percentage of the kills a cheetah gets end up getting stolen by lions and hyenas. Cheetahs need higher power and defense stats to actually be able to reap the benefits of their high mobility. The cheetah's inability to defend itself makes the early game extremely difficult for new cheetah players too. High-level players can't prevent stronger builds from griefing the new cheetah players, and as a result, very few cheetahs even reach the late game where they can abuse their high mobility stat. Long story short, F tier because they get bodied way too hard by competing builds. In D tier, we've got the lynx. I don't have too much to say about them. They've got low-medium stats across the board with the exception of stealth. And they do possess one relatively useful ability, the ability to move silently through snow. They're best at taking out small prey using stealth, but in my opinion there are better choices for this type of playstyle, such as the owl or the viper. While they don't get griefed nearly as badly as cheetahs, they do have to watch out for cougars, wolves, and coyotes. One level higher and we reach the cougar. While its stealth is actually a bit lower than the lynx's, all other stats are a good bit higher, especially strength. However, it's not quite strong enough to overpower midweights like deer and elk without putting itself at risk for taking damage too. While it can climb pretty well, it's most comfortable duking it out on the ground.
So
I've
wait,
never
are
discussed
lynx really that big? I thought that was just like that one lynx, bro.
troll builds.
Lynx. What sound they make? Sound like a car engine. Oh, look at that thing. That'd be a cute pet, bro. Okay, now this thing will eat you alive. Yo. Like, look at it. Them things are huge. Like, them at a baby, though? That thing, 5. What you mean? Yeah, I really should ban you.
On this channel, but honestly the trolling potential with cougars is too good not to mention.
Yeah.
Cougars lack access to the roar move, but that doesn't stop them from trying, and as a result, they have one of the craziest battle cries in the game. Instead of actually being useful as an intimidating sonic AoE, it instead sounds almost exactly like a woman being brutally murdered, which is one of the few ways to seriously mess with human players that invade their territory. There are two major styles players opt for when going for a cat build, the feline style and the panther style. All of the builds so far have been in the feline style. There are two major styles players opt for when going for a cat build, the feline style and the panther style. All of the builds so far have been in the feline style, which generally has higher mobility but lower strength. Panther style cats, on the other hand, are stronger, bulkier, and also have access to the panther signature move, Roar. So we're finally going to switch gears over to the panther builds as we continue.
What noise does a panther make, bro? If I hear them starting to fly, why would you start flying? They sound disgusting. What about a jaguar? Oh, they don't have it for a jaguar. Wait. Yo. Oh my god, cougar. Oh, they're the ones that go. These animals make some crazy. What about a panda? I never heard of panda. That's interesting. Monkey? Is it just ooh ah? What a horse. They just go neigh. Okay, it's just them running. Okay, that's cool. What about bear? Bear. It's like ASMR. Ooh, what about a gorilla? Okay. Polar bear? Owls make noises? Oh, the other ones. See, bro.
Up the tier list. The leopard build is the next rung up on the tier list, being Africa's premier solo rogue class. Of the panther style builds, this is the smallest. This offers the leopard players maximum mobility while climbing, a trait they use to the fullest.
It just fell from the sky.
While it is definitely stronger than the cheetah, it is still no match.
I look like an owl. Like, what does that even mean? No, I don't, bro. She says that's not my twin, bro.
For gank squads like lions and hyenas. But unlike the cheetah, leopards actually have a way to avoid getting their kill stolen. Leopards can climb much better than any of their competitors, and they do have high enough strength to carry their kill up the tree. This allows them to gain all of the XP they deserve. All these traits together are in the leopard high B tier. Now we're at A tier, and this is where the tier list gets a little muddy, since we've only got 2 tiers left to place quite a few more builds. If I'm being honest, even though I placed leopards in B tier, the snow leopard players, with their extra stealth bonus, have a strong argument for A tier. Anyways, at the bottom of A tier, we have the largest of the cats, the tiger. Not many unique abilities, but generally just very high stats.
Strong.
While tigers do have decent stealth, they rely more on their sheer power for winning fights. This allows them to take out tough and dangerous players like the boar. One top tier ability they do have is their incredibly powerful jump, making them deceptively mobile while appearing to have only average speed. Overall, if the tier list was simply about who would win in a one-on-one fight, tigers would be S tier, no doubt. Unfortunately, that isn't the case, because even though they'd lose in a one-on-one fight with a tiger, lions are undoubtedly...
Out as a kid, lions were cats. I was so sad. I thought they were part of the dogs, bro.
More viable overall. If you watch my videos a lot, you know I see coordinated attacks as one of the most overpowered strats in the whole game, and lions are basically the poster child for coordinated attacks. So far, most of the other cats we've talked about all
on here, lion, bro. Alright, like hey, as a kid, bro, you just don't know things, man. Yo, that's orb.
Generally target players playing squishy.
I used to think as a kid, like, you know, roller coasters, they had the loop-de-loop. I used to think that, like, it could get stuck on that loop-de-loop, and that's why I was scared of roller coasters.
Targets. But lion players are some of the only ones bold enough to deliberately attack a tank. Their highly organized parties they form allow them to control entire sections of the map, and their defined roles prevent leeching and also protect newer players from gankers. All in all, great build, easily A+ tier. And finally, we've reached the top tier, the build that embodies everything excellent about the cat dynasty, the Jaguar. Jaguars are the absolute best build in the entire game when it comes to one-shotting players with a critical hit. They have the most damaging bite of any of the cats, enough to pierce armor, and their incredible accuracy lets them nail their target right in the weak point, the back of the head. They may not have the raw stats that the lion and tiger do, but they more than make up for it with their special abilities. The most important is their incredible eyes, which negate all stealth bonuses. Most cats have great vision and can even see in darkness, but the jaguar can even see a target obscured by camouflage or hiding in murky water.
That's crazy.
The second, less
even
obvious
hide.
perk is that jaguars are the most versatile cat build available. They're great sprinters and pristine climbers, but they're also just as much at home hunting in the water as they are in a tree. No other build
They
can
could
boast
swim like
dominance in the
crazy.
arboreal, terrestrial, and aquatic map zones. They really do dominate. Lions act like they own the place, but they do face plenty of competition. But jaguars, they do own the place. They could carry their food up a tree if they wanted to, but there's no need. So yeah, a build that can one-shot anything on its server and dominates 3 of the 4 main play zones. That's your S tier. So there you have it, the tier list of the cats. Thanks for watching. Oh, did I forget something? Yeah, you buggers are getting your own video.